My wife secretly married another guy while she was married to me. I stepped into the garage on a quiet Tuesday evening, thinking of nothing more than taking out the trash before dinner. The air smelled faintly of damp cardboard and lawn clippings. As I reached for the roll of trash bags on the shelf, I froze. My wife, Clarice, was in her car just outside, parked with the engine off. The windows were rolled up, but the garage door was open enough to let her voice slip through. She was on the phone. "I thought I'd be somewhere different by now," she said, her voice a soft whisper. "Thurman's not a bad man. He's just safe. Predictable. I guess I thought I'd be married to someone more ambitious by this age." There was a pause. A woman's voice laughed on the other end, her sister Delia, most likely. They talked almost daily. "You can always reassess once the house is paid off," Delia responded with a chuckle. "Nothing's permanent unless you let it be." Clarice's next words landed like a stone in my stomach. "I think I married down." I stood completely still. Trash bags in hand. My breath held itself in my chest. I didn't make a sound. Not even a rustle. My ears strained to hear every syllable. "He's a decent man," Clarice continued, "but he's not exceptional. He's average in every way: work, looks, ambition. Even in ways I probably shouldn't say aloud." More laughter. That was it. That was the moment something inside me shifted. Not like a fire lighting up, more like ice settling in. I turned around, trash bag still in hand, and walked quietly back into the house. She never even knew I'd heard a word. At dinner that night, she was herself, pleasant, casual. She asked how my day had been. I lied and said it had been fine. I even smiled. I don't know how. Maybe it was muscle memory. Have you ever looked across the table at someone who just quietly broke you and had to pretend like your insides weren't unraveling? That night, while she slept, I lay awake. I stared at the ceiling, turning those words over and over in my head. "I think I married down. He's average in every way." We'd been married for almost 8 years. We met in college. She was finishing her degree in library sciences, I was working toward mine in environmental engineering. We were never a flashy couple, but we were solid, or so I thought. Over the next several days, I became someone different. Still me on the outside, but quietly transformed. I began to notice things I hadn't paid attention to before. Clarice started keeping her phone face down. She began staying late at work more frequently. She received text messages that made her smile and then quickly disappear from her screen. She wore a new perfume. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. But my gut had already drawn its own map. I waited. I observed. I pretended. 2 weeks after the garage moment, I did something I'm not proud of. I checked her phone while she was in the shower. It took 3 tries to guess her passcode, her childhood address. She wasn't being discreet. There it was. Dozens of messages from a man named Nelson. The same Nelson she'd once referred to offhandedly as an old college friend. The same Nelson she said she hadn't seen in years. There were no explicit confessions. Nothing that spelled out betrayal in bold letters. But there were enough quiet phrases to tell the truth without shouting. "It's been so good reconnecting. I miss the way we used to talk. It's easier with you. I wish things were different." They'd met up at least 3 times in the past month. Once for lunch. Once at a local gallery opening. Once for coffee, which, knowing Clarice, was code for something she didn't want to explain. But there was more. I found a bank account in her name that I hadn't known about. She'd been setting aside money for over a year. Small amounts, $100 here, $250 there, until it totaled over $19,000. A secret savings account. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I wasn't ready to shout or accuse. I was past that, somehow. What I felt wasn't rage, it was preparation. My instincts said this wasn't a moment to explode. It was a moment to plan. That same week, I called Randall, a lifelong friend and former roommate from college. He had a furnished room available above his garage. "Is it still open?" I asked. "It is if you need it," he replied. Next, I spoke with an attorney, a quiet, no-nonsense man named Gideon. I laid everything out for him, and he gave me the blueprint: what to document, how to protect myself, and how not to tip my hand too soon. I spent the next 10 days setting the foundation for a quiet exit. I copied every bank statement. Every message. I cataloged photographs. I made a list in the Notes app on my phone titled, Departure Steps. Meanwhile, I smiled at dinner. I asked her about her day. I kissed her goodnight. I said, I love you, even when the words had turned brittle. On a Saturday morning, Clarice left for her usual spin class. I had been waiting for this moment. I packed a few bags, just what I needed for a while: clothes, documents, photos, the last few belongings that really mattered to me. I took one last walk through the house and left my wedding ring on the kitchen counter. No note. No drama. Just a quiet end to something I hadn't realized was ending for years. By noon, I was pulling into Randall's driveway, the late summer sun flashing across the windshield like a signal that something had finally shifted. He opened the door, didn't say anything at first, just gave me a solid nod and helped me carry the bags upstairs. I turned my phone on silent and left it face down on the nightstand. For a while, I just sat there, staring at the ceiling of a room that wasn't mine, but also wasn't hers. When I finally checked my phone that evening, I had 13 missed calls and 8 unread texts. Where are you? Your car isn't here. Are you okay? Please call me. I'm worried. I didn't answer. At midnight, I sent one message. I'm safe. Please don't contact me for now. Her reply came almost instantly. Thurman, what's going on? Please come home so we can talk. I powered off my phone and placed it in the drawer. I didn't want to talk. Not yet. Not until I had my feet under me. Not until I figured out who I was without her. The morning after I left, I woke up in Randall's guest room to unfamiliar sounds: birds outside, the soft hum of his ancient ceiling fan, a neighborhood dog barking somewhere in the distance. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then I remembered. It all returned in a flood: the garage, the conversation, the hidden messages, the bank account, the look on her face the night before when I told her nothing at all. I stayed under the covers for a few minutes, staring up at the faded patch in the ceiling above me. I hadn't noticed it before, shaped like a crooked heart. My phone, still off, sat on the nightstand like a sealed door I wasn't ready to open again. By the end of that day, I had taken the first real step forward. I called the bank. Our joint checking and savings accounts had automatic transfers set up. I explained to the bank that I was separating from my wife and requested a temporary freeze on the joint account to avoid any surprise withdrawals. No dramatics. Just logistics. The banker I spoke with, Eugene, I think his name was, didn't ask many questions. He'd probably seen this before. I moved half the funds into a new account under my name and canceled all linked cards. I texted Clarice only once: I've separated our shared funds. You still have access to your half. She didn't reply for several hours. Then came, why are you doing this? Why won't you talk to me? I left the message unanswered. The next few days blurred into a methodical checklist. I changed the passwords on everything: email, insurance, online subscriptions, my retirement login. I forwarded my mail to a P.O. box. I scanned and saved every document I'd brought with me. I bought a file organizer from the pharmacy down the street and labeled each tab carefully. I wasn't trying to hurt her, I was trying to protect what remained of myself. Randall came home each evening and found me either staring at my laptop or pacing the upstairs hallway. He didn't press me for conversation. Sometimes, he'd slide a plate of food onto my desk and sit in the next room watching old movies with the sound low. He'd always been like that: solid, dependable, emotionally fluent without needing many words. By the end of that first week, I knew I needed more than logistics. I needed help untangling the weight I was carrying around inside. So I went back to Gideon, my attorney, and asked if he had a recommendation for a therapist. He referred me to someone named Nadine Buckner, a counselor who specialized in relational betrayal and identity rebuilding. She was in her late 50s, warm-voiced, no-nonsense. During our first video call, I was tense, stiff, unsure what to say or where to start. She told me, people often confuse betrayal with destruction. But sometimes, betrayal is an invitation. A hard one. But an invitation nonetheless. An invitation to what? I didn't ask aloud. But her words stuck. We met twice a week, and slowly, I began to make sense of the noise. I didn't want revenge. I didn't even want an apology. What I wanted was clarity. And the ability to live without second-guessing every moment of the past 8 years. Around day 10, the messages from Clarice began to change. They softened. From "where are you?" to "can we just talk?" Then, "we can fix this." I know we can. And finally, "even if you're angry, please let me explain." I didn't reply. Not because I didn't care. But because I knew I'd spent too many years trying to make other people comfortable at the cost of my own truth. I needed to understand what I felt before I could say anything that mattered. One afternoon, I sat at a cafe not far from Randall's house and reviewed the messages again. I noticed something strange. Most of the recent ones were brief, almost uncertain. They came at odd hours, 2:12 a.m., 4:48 a.m. Like she was wide awake when the world was quiet, trying to make sense of her own silence. A few days later, I received a call from Wallace, our next-door neighbor. I hadn't told him anything. But word was spreading. "Hey, man. I don't want to intrude," Wallace said, "but I saw someone else's car at the house. Different from yours. Just figured I'd check in." He didn't ask me to explain. But I gave him the short version. I left. "No, I'm not sick. No, there wasn't a big fight. Just something I heard that I couldn't unhear. Something that told me I wasn't where I was supposed to be anymore." He didn't ask who the other man was. He didn't need to. People notice more than you think. The next few days were quiet, but I knew things were happening behind the scenes. Through the security camera I discreetly installed months earlier, hidden inside a lamp fixture in the living room, I saw her pacing more often. On the phone. Staring at unopened envelopes. Once, she sat on the couch with her laptop and just stared at a blank screen for nearly 20 minutes. Then came the storm. On day 17, Clarice's voice rose high enough to be caught by the microphone. "I know he's telling people I cheated. I know it," she shouted into her phone. "He's turning people against me." A long pause. She paced. "I didn't do anything wrong," she insisted. "Not technically. He just assumed the worst." And there it was. Still trying to shape the narrative. Still trying to draw the lines between what was technically wrong and morally empty. I turned off the feed that night. Not out of anger, but because it no longer mattered what she said. I knew what I'd heard. I knew what I'd seen. No one had to validate it for me. Day 21. I began drafting my own version of the story, not for anyone else, just for me. I opened a blank document and wrote the words. I left because silence was better than being spoken about like a transaction. Then I kept writing. For the first time in years, I wasn't writing for work, or for emails, or for anyone's expectations. I was writing for the version of myself I'd lost somewhere in the years of routine, compromise, and subtle disappointments. Day 24. Clarice finally sent a different kind of message. "I'm sorry. I know you heard what I said in the garage. I wish I could take it back. I wasn't honest with you or even with myself." That one, I didn't delete. But I didn't respond either. Not yet. It was on day 29 that Clarice asked to meet face to face. No begging. No promises. Just a quiet message. "If we can't fix it, that's one thing. But I need to say some things to you directly, no text, no voicemail. Just one honest conversation." I read the message twice. Then again. I didn't answer right away. I went for a walk instead, 2 miles through Randall's neighborhood, where old maples lined the sidewalks and wind chimes made soft music in the breeze. I thought about what I'd say. What I wouldn't say. Whether I'd say anything at all. By the time I returned, I had made my decision. Okay. Tomorrow. 2 p.m. Cornerstone Cafe. Come alone. I arrived 30 minutes early. The place was nearly empty. I chose a table in the back, against the wall, where I had a clear view of the entrance. The same cafe we'd gone to on our third date, before marriage, before jobs, before the slow erosion neither of us saw coming. The barista knew my name by now. I'd become a regular over the past few weeks. Black coffee, no sugar. It wasn't that I loved the taste, it just made things feel simple. At exactly 1:58, Clarice walked in. She hesitated at the door, then spotted me and approached. She looked different, not in the dramatic, movie scene kind of way. Just tired. Her hair pulled back in a way she used to wear it when we were both in college. No makeup. A loose sweater and jeans. She wasn't trying to impress me. She sat across from me, her eyes flicking toward the phone I had resting on the table. I tapped the screen and pressed record. Voice memo app. In plain sight. She nodded once. "That's fair," she said softly. What followed wasn't rehearsed. I could tell. Her voice was calm but uneven, like someone walking across thin ice they weren't sure would hold. "I've been seeing someone weekly, Nadine Buckner. I think she's the same therapist you've been seeing." I nodded slightly. "She's been helping me understand how I got here. Why I did what I did. And it's not about blaming anyone, it's about not hiding behind anything anymore." She pulled a folded piece of paper from her coat pocket and slid it across the table. It was a timeline, dates, decisions, emotions. She had handwritten it all out. I didn't pick it up yet. I started drifting a couple of years ago. When you turned down that promotion, something inside me tightened. Not because I didn't understand your reasons, but because I'd wanted to leave this city. I didn't tell you how much it mattered to me. Her voice didn't waver when she mentioned Nelson. He reached out last year. Just a message at first. Then another. And eventually, I responded. I told myself it was harmless. But that was dishonest. I knew why I was responding. There was no romantic tone to her confession. No drama. Just a quiet truth that settled on the table between us like a coat of dust. She reached for her bag and pulled out a folder. Inside were printed financial statements, including documents I hadn't seen, letters from the bank, overdue notices, credit warnings. I saw her name on several foreclosure alerts. Her credit score had plummeted. You were right about the savings account, she said. But I spent most of it trying to cover the mortgage after you left. I should have told you earlier. I should have told you everything earlier. I listened. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't filled with anger. Just weariness. When she paused, I slid my own folder onto the table. Screenshots. Transaction records. Photos from the restaurant where I'd watched her and Nelson meet. My copy of the audio from the garage conversation. She looked at each item like it was a page from a book she'd read too quickly. Then I said, what hurt most wasn't the messages. Or even Nelson. It was hearing you describe me like a placeholder. Like someone you were just waiting to outgrow. Clarice's eyes welled up, but she didn't look away. I thought if I said it out loud, it would make it feel more real. That it would help me believe I wasn't the one who'd made the wrong choice. But it wasn't about you. It was about me. We sat in silence. Not tense. Just still. Eventually, she spoke again. I'll sign the divorce papers. No contest. And I'll include a written admission. I won't fight you for the house. I know it's underwater, but I'll cooperate in selling it. She reached into her purse one last time and handed me a sealed envelope. Her expression didn't change, but something about her body language softened. I wrote you something, she said. You don't have to read it now. Or ever. But I wanted you to have something that wasn't explained across a table. I took the envelope but didn't open it. We walked out of the cafe separately. There was no dramatic farewell. No moment where she asked for forgiveness or begged for a second chance. There was only the weight of shared history and the quiet understanding that not all stories have a neat ending. Weeks later. Selling the house was as frustrating as expected. We listed it quickly but had to accept a low offer just to avoid foreclosure. The final sale left us with a loss of $31,800. We split it evenly. I used my savings and a small loan from my retirement account to cover my half. Clarice had to borrow from her parents, who, from what I've heard, weren't thrilled. The day we finalized the sale, we both sat at the title office. No one made small talk. The signing was just business. At the end, the notary offered a polite congratulations, not knowing what kind of chapter had really just closed. In the parking lot, Clarice handed me a small box. You left this, she said. Inside was my grandfather's watch, scratched and old, but still running. She'd had the band replaced. It deserved better than the drawer I kept it in. I thanked her and walked away. I moved 2 towns over, not far, but far enough. I rented a small apartment above a bookstore. It was quiet, modest, and most importantly, mine. Randall helped me move. At the end of the weekend, he handed me a check for every month I'd stayed with him. You tried to pay me, he said. I didn't cash a single one. Consider the seed money for something new. I didn't argue. I started sleeping again. Not perfectly. But better. I picked up my old hobby, photography. I began taking early morning walks with a second-hand camera. I signed up for a local community class. No one there knew my story. They just knew I liked taking pictures of windows, hands, and bicycles leaning against fences. Nadine, my therapist, said that was progress. It took me almost 2 months to open the envelope Clarice gave me at the cafe. I kept it in the top drawer of my nightstand, under a few books and papers. I'd see it every few days and consider opening it. But each time, something stopped me. Not fear. Just the knowledge that once I read it, a door might close for good. And I wasn't quite ready for that yet. In the meantime, life settled into a gentle rhythm. My apartment, though small, became a place I looked forward to returning to. I set up a chair on the balcony with a tiny table just big enough for a cup of coffee and a notebook. Some evenings I'd sit out there and write not emails or work reports, but actual thoughts. Feelings. Fragments of what I'd lost and what I was learning to rebuild. Randall and I stayed in touch. Once a month, he'd drive over and we'd get dinner, usually takeout. He never asked about Clarice. Never asked about Nelson. Just talked about his old Ford project in the garage or his new favorite mystery novel. That kind of ordinary was gold. I also stayed consistent with therapy. Nadine helped me work through the quieter aftermath, things people don't see. Not the big rupture, but the little aches, the loss of shared routines, of inside jokes, of someone finishing your sentence or knowing your favorite mug. She told me that healing isn't about going back to who you were before. It's about becoming someone stronger than you knew you needed to be. That made sense. It still does. One Sunday evening, I made a cup of tea, sat on the balcony, and opened the envelope. Her handwriting was careful, a little shaky in spots. Dear Thurman. When I handed you this letter, I wasn't sure if you'd ever read it. I want to start by saying I know I hurt you. Not just with the things I said, but with the things I didn't say, the silences, the evasion, the choices I made behind your back. I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out why I became the person who could say those words in the garage that night. I'm married down. He's average. I've played those words back in my mind so many times, and each time I cringe. They were cheap. They were thoughtless. But more than that, they were cowardly. I wasn't speaking to you when I said them. I was performing for my sister, trying to sound like someone who had everything under control, someone who had made all the right moves. And in doing so, I dismissed one of the few genuinely good things I had in my life. You never deserved to be the target of my dissatisfaction. My disappointment was with myself, not with you. I was scared of becoming stuck, and instead of telling you that, I reached for something easier, familiar attention, false comfort. And in doing that, I lost the person who showed up for me every day, without needing to be flashy or loud about it. I'm not asking for reconciliation. I know there's no going back. I just wanted you to hear, in my words and without defense, that I see the damage I caused, and I will carry that awareness into every part of who I become from here forward. You were never average. You were steady. And kind. And honest. I hope your new life brings you peace and something even better than healing, growth. Clarice. I folded the letter neatly and placed it back into the envelope. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just sat with it. The letter didn't change anything, but it did offer something valuable: finality without bitterness. Honesty without agenda. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Some things are best left as acknowledgments, not openings. It's now been just over 6 months since I heard that conversation in the garage, since the world I thought I knew tilted sideways. Clarice moved into a small apartment across town. From what I hear through a mutual acquaintance, she's working again, trying to get back on her feet. Her relationship with Nelson fizzled out soon after the house sold. According to that same acquaintance, he pulled away once things got complicated, just as I suspected he would. She and her sister, Delia, haven't spoken in weeks. As for me, I'm still here. Still quiet, still healing, still building. I've stuck with photography. Not professionally, just as something that reminds me to look closely at the world again. I've even submitted a few prints to a local gallery's open call showcase. Nothing major. But it feels good to see something of mine on a wall, not tied to anyone else's expectations. I've made new friends. Nothing deep yet, but genuine. And last week, I ran into Marion, Clarice's friend from her old book club, the one I saw leaving the house once. We met unexpectedly at a bookstore downtown. She was in town visiting her brother and recognized me by my coat. We talked for a while about books, about movies, about life after disruption. She never once brought up Clarice, and I appreciated that. As we walked to our cars, she asked if I might want to grab dinner when she's back next month. I said yes. Not as a date. But maybe not a date either. Just an open door. Looking back. It's strange what betrayal does to a person. Not just the heartbreak of it, but the way it rewrites your story, quietly, relentlessly. For a while, I thought that was the end of everything I had built. But I realize now it was only the end of the version of me who had settled for being overlooked, dismissed, or quietly undervalued. I'm not perfect now. I'm not healed in some poetic way. I still wake up some mornings with echoes of doubt. I still hear her voice, sometimes, when I'm walking through the grocery store or folding a towel just the way she used to like. But most days? I feel steady. I feel whole. And that's something I didn't think I'd be able to say so soon. This new life isn't spectacular. It's not dramatic or wildly adventurous. But it is mine. I don't define myself by what someone else failed to see. I define myself by what I've learned to see in me. And that, quietly, steadily, is enough. Thank you for watching the video. Like it if you watched the video to the end, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.